I never thought a garden flag could cause chaos. It wasn't political or flashy, just a small flag with my son's military unit insignia, fluttering gently by the porch. My son, Matthew, had passed away 2 months ago in active service, and I'd been trying to hold myself together. That flag. It was my anchor. Then came the bright yellow HOA violation notice, taped right to my door like some kind of scarlet letter. Unauthorized display of nonconforming symbol, it said. $150 fine. Compliance within 48 hours. I laughed at first, thinking it was a mistake. Surely even the HOA wasn't this heartless. I called the president, Karen Holt, a woman whose personality could curdle milk. Rules are rules, she chirped through the phone. We can't have personal decorations. It ruins the neighborhood's aesthetic uniformity. I explained that it was my son's memorial flag, that I'd remove it after the funeral. Her tone stayed as crisp as her white cardigan. I understand your loss, she said flatly. But grief doesn't excuse violations. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a human being. I was dealing with an HOA robot. I took a picture of the notice, the flag, and Karen's smug signature at the bottom. Something told me I'd need proof later. At that point, I didn't know that this tiny war over a flag would turn into something far darker. Something that would end with my son's uniform burned and Karen's fake smile seared into my memory forever. 2 days later, another letter arrived. Certified mail this time. Final warning. It screamed in bold red font. Failure to remove the unauthorized symbol will result in further action, including possible property lien. A lien. Over a flag. I walked outside and looked at my quiet street. Perfect lawns, cookie-cutter houses, and a handful of neighbors pretending they hadn't seen me. Everyone knew about Karen's tyranny. Most just kept their heads down. My next-door neighbor, Tom, whispered over the hedge. She fined me last month for having my trash can out an hour early. I sighed. She's going too far. Tom nodded. She's been president for 6 years. No one runs against her. People are afraid of her mouth. That night, I emailed the HOA board, a polite, detailed message explaining the flag's significance. I attached photos of my son in uniform and the obituary notice. No response. Instead, the next morning, a maintenance worker arrived in a neon vest and took the flag down himself. I ran out and stopped him. Who authorized this? He shrugged. HOA orders. Said it violates Community Code 8.3, no unapproved displays. I called Karen. Her tone was disturbingly cheerful. You were warned. Don't make this harder on yourself. My hands shook. I knew this wasn't about a flag anymore. It was about control. So I decided to start documenting everything. Every letter, every photo, every phone call. If Karen wanted a war, I'd give her one she wouldn't forget. The following weekend, I built something new, a memorial display in the front yard. A framed photo of Matthew, a folded flag under glass, and his dress uniform, pressed and displayed in a shadow box on a stand. It wasn't just decoration. It was sacred. Neighbors stopped to offer condolences. Even the usually distant families left flowers. For a brief moment, my yard became a place of quiet respect. Until Monday morning. Another envelope. This one thicker. Inside was a violation packet. 5 separate citations totaling $900 in fines. The charges? Improper structure, visual clutter, and unapproved materials. I stormed into the HOA office. Karen sat behind her desk, sipping iced coffee, tapping her nails on the table like a metronome of cruelty. It's a memorial, I said, placing the photos of my son in front of her. She didn't even look. It's still non-compliant. Sentimentality doesn't override aesthetics. You're heartless, I said, voice trembling. She smiled. I prefer consistent. That's when I realized Karen didn't just dislike me. She enjoyed this. She wanted me humiliated into submission. I left without another word. But that night, I began reading the HOA bylaws line by line. Page 47. Temporary memorials are permitted with board approval. Approval I'd never been offered. Karen had broken her own rule. And that was the moment I decided to fight back. Not with shouting, but with evidence. A week later, I received another letter. This time signed by multiple neighbors. We, the undersigned, find your display distressing and disruptive to community harmony. It looked official, but the signatures were identical, same slanted handwriting. Karen's. Tom confirmed it. She did the same thing to a woman who put up Halloween lights last year. I scanned the letter and added it to my growing evidence folder. HOA Karen War, Exhibit C. Karen's behavior was escalating. She started driving past my house slowly, phone in hand, snapping photos. She even stood across the street one afternoon, smirking while talking to another board member. My memorial display remained untouched. I had installed a camera above it, recording 24/7. One evening, I caught Karen herself stepping onto my lawn, clipboard in hand. She took a measuring tape to the display stand and smiled directly into my camera before walking off. That smirk told me everything. She wanted me to react, to break, to lash out. Instead, I posted the footage online, in a local community Facebook group. Caption: When honoring your fallen son violates HOA aesthetics. Within hours, it went viral locally. Dozens of neighbors chimed in, defending me and calling the HOA heartless. For the first time, Karen looked cornered. But she wasn't done. She was about to do something unthinkable, something that would make the whole town turn on her. It happened 2 nights before the funeral. I was in the kitchen when I smelled smoke. Rushing outside, I saw it. The memorial display engulfed in flames. My son's uniform, his medals, the flag, the shadow box, all burning. My hands went numb. I grabbed the hose, but the fire spread fast. Someone had poured lighter fluid. Tom ran over shouting. I saw her car. Karen's SUV. She stopped right before it started. By the time the fire department arrived, everything was gone. All that was left were ashes and twisted metal. The next morning, a letter was taped to my door. Per HOA policy, your non-compliant display has been removed to restore community standards. Removed. Removed by fire. I took the letter straight to the police. They treated it seriously at first, arson investigation, questioning neighbors, until Karen produced a permit showing authorized removal of hazardous material. A permit signed by herself. The investigator frowned but said it might take time to prove intent. Karen walked past my property later that evening, smiling, clutching her clipboard like a trophy. That smile burned worse than the fire itself. But she'd made one mistake. I still had camera footage. And what it showed would destroy her career, her presidency, and her fake perfect life. I spent that entire night reviewing the footage from my front camera. At 2:13 a.m., Karen's SUV rolled up. She stepped out with a gas can in hand. She looked around, glanced right into the lens, and poured it around the base of the memorial. Then she struck a lighter. The screen flashed white. My heart pounded. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, deadly calm. I backed up the footage 3 times, saved it on USB drives, and sent copies to the police, the HOA board, and my lawyer cousin. By morning, the footage had leaked online. Someone from the Facebook group shared it. Within hours, it had 200,000 views. Karen tried to claim the video was doctored. But the timestamps, license plate, and her own HOA-issued clipboard in hand made that impossible. Neighbors started leaving notes and flowers on my lawn. Justice for Matthew. One said. When police finally showed up again, they didn't ask questions. They arrested Karen in front of everyone, still in her pastel cardigan, screaming about community harmony. I thought it was over. But HOAs are stubborn, and the board tried to defend her actions. So I went to the next board meeting, armed with bylaws, footage, and the ashes of my son's uniform. And that's where the final war began. The HOA board meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a place that smelled like burnt coffee and false authority. I arrived 10 minutes early, wearing Matthew's service pin on my shirt. Every seat was full. Even people from neighboring developments had shown up after the video went viral. Karen wasn't there. She'd been temporarily suspended pending investigation. But her loyal sidekick, Doug the treasurer, sat at the front table like a defensive parrot. We'll begin by addressing item 1, Doug said. The unauthorized recording posted online, a violation of community privacy. I stood. Unauthorized? She burned my son's memorial. You're worried about privacy? The crowd murmured. Doug tried to regain control. We all sympathize, but I slammed a binder on the table. Here are your bylaws. Section 47B. Temporary memorials allowed for up to 60 days with board notice. I gave notice. She ignored it. She destroyed property, falsified a permit, and violated 5 of your own codes. Someone in the crowd shouted, "We saw the video, Doug." His face turned red. "This is not a mob." "No," I said calmly. "This is accountability." I handed over the printed frames from the footage. Karen's face, the gas can, the flame. The room went silent. Then an older man in the back rose. Motion to remove the current board effective immediately. The vote passed unanimously. For the first time in months, I exhaled. But I knew Karen wouldn't fade quietly. She'd built this HOA empire herself. And people like her always come back swinging. A week later, a slick lawyer's letter appeared in my mailbox. Ms. Karen Holt denies all allegations. Any further defamation will result in legal action. She was out on bail and clearly furious. That evening, she marched down the street, ignoring the whispers, pretending she still owned the place. She pointed at my rebuilt memorial, this time protected by plexiglass, and sneered, "You're obsessed with me." I smiled. "No, Karen. I'm obsessed with justice." I'd spent days compiling a dossier. Her misuse of HOA funds, fake signatures, and illegal reimbursements for decor consulting. My cousin, the lawyer, helped me package everything neatly for the county's housing authority. Within 48 hours, an investigation was opened. Karen tried to hold a community meeting in her driveway, handing out printed flyers claiming she was the real victim of online bullying. Only 2 people showed, her husband and Doug. Meanwhile, local news picked up the story. The headline read, "HOA president accused of burning fallen soldiers' memorial." She called me that night. "You ruined my life." I said quietly, "You burned my sons." Then hung up. By then, sympathy poured in. Letters from veterans, offers to replace Matthew's uniform, and a GoFundMe started by strangers. The community that once feared her began standing up. Karen might have returned, but so had the neighborhood's conscience. When investigators began auditing the HOA accounts, the skeletons started dancing. They found $28,000 missing from beautification funds. Turns out, Karen had been paying her niece's landscaping company, which didn't exist. Doug had approved every check. The news spread like wildfire. Suddenly, all the people she'd fined for silly reasons, flower colors, mailbox sizes, wind chimes, came forward with their own stories. I sat in the back of the public hearing, watching Karen's face as the auditors listed her misdeeds one by one. Unauthorized expenditures, falsified permits, conflict of interest. She kept muttering, "They're lying. I did everything by the book." The chairman replied dryly, "You wrote the book, Ms. Holt." When they played the clip of her lighting the fire, the room gasped. Even Doug wouldn't look at her. The board officially dissolved the HOA for gross misconduct. All funds were frozen pending restitution. I expected to feel triumphant, but instead I felt tired, like I'd carried a weight too long. That night, I went to Matthew's grave and told him, "It's almost over, kid. She can't hurt anyone else now." But the real twist? A neighbor revealed Karen had secretly filed paperwork for a new HOA under a different name. One that would give her total control again. She wasn't finished. Not yet. Her new group called itself the Harmony Council. Same rules, same members, different stationery. Flyers appeared on doors promising restoration of order. Karen even used my name in her pitch. "We will protect this neighborhood from emotional exploitation and online harassment." I laughed out loud. Emotional exploitation? That's her entire personality. I countered with facts, posting scanned documents showing her fraud case was still active, and screenshots of her permit forgery. Within hours, her attempt to recruit neighbors backfired spectacularly. Someone even made a parody account called Karen of the Ashes, posting memes like aesthetic ethics. But she doubled down. She tried to sue me for defamation again, claiming my posts caused her emotional distress. My cousin filed a counterclaim for intentional infliction of emotional distress against her. While lawyers tangled, the community rallied. Veterans groups donated a replacement uniform for the memorial, complete with Matthew's rank and medals. When I unveiled it, half the town showed up, and news crews too. Karen drove by mid-ceremony, glaring from her car window. I didn't react. I didn't need to. Her empire was crumbling, and every neighbor she'd ever bullied now saw her for what she was. That day, I finally felt like Matthew's honor was restored, but the best part was still to come. The day of the civil hearing arrived. Karen strutted in wearing an all-white suit, as if innocence could be worn like armor. The judge didn't seem impressed. "Ms. Holt," he began, "the evidence is extensive. Do you have anything to add?" She launched into a 20-minute tirade about neighborhood integrity and ungrateful residents. The courtroom stared in disbelief. My lawyer calmly stood. "Your Honor, Exhibit D. Video evidence showing the defendant committing arson, followed by falsified HOA documentation." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You mean this clipboard here?" "Yes, Your Honor. Signed by the defendant." He watched the footage in silence. When it ended, he simply said, "Case dismissed in favor of the plaintiff. Restitution of damages awarded. And I'm forwarding this to the district attorney for criminal review." Karen went pale. Outside, reporters surrounded me. "What will you do now?" I said, "Plant flowers." Because that's exactly what I did. Bright red poppies around Matthew's memorial, the color of sacrifice and strength. Karen's lawyer later called, offering a settlement if I'd take the video down. I told him, the truth doesn't get deleted. The hearing ended the legal part, but the moral reckoning was just starting. Within weeks, the HOA disbanded completely. The community voted to replace it with a neighborhood cooperative. No fines, no dictators, just volunteers maintaining shared spaces. Karen sold her house under pressure, but not before someone spray-painted "Uniform Killer" on her mailbox. I didn't condone it, but I understood it. Doug fled town too. Turns out he'd forged reimbursements for printer ink that didn't exist. Local news did a follow-up. From oppression to renewal, neighborhood rebuilds after HOA scandal. They interviewed me on my porch. I told them, we learned that community isn't about control. It's about compassion. The memorial stood shining behind me. Every evening, someone left a flower. For months, Karen's name trended locally as a synonym for overreach. She lost her job at the real estate office, and rumors said she moved 3 states away. But the real victory wasn't her downfall. It was the unity that rose after. Neighbors who'd never spoken now shared barbecues and jokes about Karen Law Number 47. "Thou shalt not have joy." We laughed. We healed. For the first time since Matthew's passing, my house felt like home again. One afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a short handwritten note. "I went too far. I lost everything. I hope you and your son can forgive me, Karen." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to tear it up. Another part thought maybe, just maybe, she was human after all. I didn't reply. Some things don't deserve closure. Instead, I placed the letter beneath the memorial glass, beside Matthew's photo. Not out of forgiveness, but as a reminder. Later that week, the cooperative voted to dedicate the community garden in Matthew's name. A small plaque read, "In honor of those who served, and the families who never stop." Children played nearby, laughter echoing where once there'd been hostility. That night, I sat on the porch, coffee in hand, and realized that even from tragedy, something good had grown. A local filmmaker contacted me wanting to create a short documentary called Ashes of Authority. I agreed on one condition: no dramatization, just truth. When it premiered at the community center, nearly everyone attended. Watching the footage again, the fire, the hearings, the rebuild, was painful but powerful. The audience cried, then applauded. Afterward, a veteran approached me, saluted, and said, "Your son's story changed this town." The film later went viral online, reaching millions. People across the country shared their own HOA horror stories. Karen's lawyer tried to block it but failed. Freedom of speech, the judge ruled. By then, Karen had vanished entirely. But her legacy served as a warning. Power without empathy burns everything it touches. Spring came early the next year. The lawns, once symbols of control, now bloomed wild with color. Tom built a birdhouse in his yard shaped like a tiny soldier's helmet. Neighbors organized potlucks. Someone even suggested a Karen-free zone sign at the entrance. We all laughed. I kept Matthew's memorial simple now. Just the flag and photo. No glass, no locks. It didn't need protection anymore. Every 4th of July, we held a small parade down our street. Not to show off, but to remember. And every time I saw those kids wave flags, I thought of how one woman's cruelty accidentally sparked an entire community's compassion. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's a quiet, stubborn bloom pushing through ashes. People often ask what I remember most about Karen. Her fines, her threats, her arrogance. But honestly, what stays with me is that smile. The one she wore as flames rose from my son's uniform. That smug, unfeeling grin. Back then, I thought it was victory. Now I know it was the beginning of her downfall. Because you can fake authority, fake kindness, fake rules, but you can't fake decency. Every time I walk past the community garden, I see kids laughing, flowers blooming, and the memorial standing tall. That's the real smile. The one Karen could never destroy. So yes, the HOA burned my son's uniform 2 days before his funeral. And yes, she smiled. But in the end, the entire town smiled back for Matthew.